Another month has gone by on this road to queering, and what long, strange trip it's been. Hey guys, it's your girl Laura here over at Laura Writes. Ding! And if you're new here, hi, I'm Laura. I write young adult fiction, and I'm currently writing a young adult horror that I'm hoping to be ready to query by the end of the year. Now that is what this video series is here on my channel. This is episode 2 of Road to Querying, where I kind of reflect on what I got done the month before that's gonna get me towards being ready to query at the end of the year. Some of the things are very obvious how they're getting me there, and some things are maybe some detours on that road. But I consider all of these things that are moving me towards my goals and making me a better writer and more prepared to query. So I have been chronicling this since the beginning of the year, starting in January of 2021 with the hopes of being ready to query by the end of 2021. So fingers crossed, and if you haven't seen the first episode, I will link that down below. You can go ahead and check that video out and see what I accomplished in January and February. But in today's video, I'm gonna let you know what I accomplished in the month of March. And I'm gonna kind of break it down into 3 different categories. The books I read this month that kind of helped me on this journey, the things I learned that are sort of like something happened where I learned this thing, and then also what I actually accomplished in the writing of my book that I'm hoping to query. Now, again, if you don't already know, I'm writing a YA horror, and I'm currently working on the 0 draft. So I want to get into what I accomplished in that 0 draft, but first let's back it up a little bit and let's talk about the reading for the month, because I actually did a really good job of finishing books in March. I actually read 4 books total. 1 was a craft book and 3 were fiction. So let's talk about the craft book first. I finished reading Writing in the Dark by Tim Wagner. Now this is a writing craft book on how to write horror. This was the Let's Talk Craft Book Club choice of the month for the month of March. I'm trying to remember what month we're in and when we did it. And it was a great book. We had a great discussion. If you didn't get a chance to check out that discussion, I will link it down in the description. We had the co-host, of course, my brother Kevin over at Kevin the Writer, but we also had Lizelle from Lizelle Sandberry, and we also had Kristen from Kristen Leatherman's channel. So, like I said, if you haven't seen that yet, check out that conversation down below, and I will be doing my overall review of that book, and it will be posted next week. So if you want to know what I overall thought of the book, make sure that if you're not already subscribed to the channel, that you hit the subscribe button so you can see exactly what I thought of that book. But I did finish that. I found it very helpful. And so, but that was all I kind of did in terms of craft. Now, I did finish 3 fiction books. And before I talk about these 3 fiction books, let me just give you a little disclaimer. As you guys already know, my dog Falcor is constantly snoring in these videos, but for some reason, my cat Buffy is just meowing away. So hopefully it doesn't get to be too bad. I don't know, but she's just walking around meowing for no reason. So my apologies if we can't get that out in editing. But anyway, so the first book that I read was Don't Tell a Soul by Kirsten Miller. In fact, I think it's right here behind me. So Kirsten Miller is the co-writer with Jason Segel, and they have like a middle grade series that I know is really popular called like Nightmares or something. I haven't read them, but she wrote this book. And I finished that. It was a ghost book, so, but it was the first horror that came out in 2021 that I wanted to read, the YA horror. And so I was finally able to finish that. So I don't really want to like review books on here because, you know, it's just not really what this channel does. And plus I'm trying to get into the field of publishing, so I don't really want to be talking about anything. So I'm just going to be kind of saying the books, but yes, I finished this. It was like a ghost, girls end up dead kind of story. And so if that's something that you're interested in, I would read the synopsis to see if that's something you would want to read. But I did enjoy it in terms of thinking about my own horror and looking at what worked and what didn't work. So that's why I include those in here. So the next one I finished was The Devouring Gray. That one I know is a lot more popular. That was written by Christine Lynn Herman. And that one is more of an ensemble cast, which was interesting to read to see how you can kind of have this horror element where you're from different you know, points of view. I don't think that one's being sold as a horror. I think it's being sold as a dark fantasy. I don't think this one, maybe this one's being sold as a horror, but I mean, it has ghosts, you know, so, and then, The Devouring Gray has like the supernatural element is like something supernatural in the woods outside of the town. And then also like some, yeah, just some supernatural stuff from that. So if you like that kind of horror, I would definitely recommend that you check out the synopsis of that book to see if it's something that you might be interested in. But I really liked being able to kind of look at the different voices and how that kind of worked and how that could work in future books of mine, perhaps. And then the last book that I read is called This Is Not a Ghost Story, and that is by Andrea Portes. I listened to that one on Scribd, and so that is also obviously another ghost story. I had a problem with reading this one and listening to that one at the same time because they both have like similar setups where it's like they're in a house, like a big house up in like the Northeast. Wait, was the second book in the Northeast? Yeah, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah, it was. So they're like both in these houses in the Northeast, and there's like ghosts and like missing girls stuff. So it's like, they were very similar. But once I finished this, then I was able to finish that on Scribd. And so they were kind of similar and they did have some overlapping. But if you really like the ghost missing girl, and I think they both had nice little like feminist twists on them as well, then definitely check out those to see if it might be something that you're interested in. But anyway, I read those. I do consider reading any horror or craft book or really kind of any YA as something that is getting me closer towards queering because it is part of my development as a writer. I'm one of those people who needs to read what I'm writing while I'm writing it because it keeps me in the mood. It keeps me thinking about ideas and wanting to do something different. So I will admit that I've realized that a lot of the YA horror is a lot of ghost books. There's nothing wrong with ghost books, and I do have a ghost book idea, but it really had me thinking, okay, like, what can I do? What can I bring to my story that's going to make it a little different than what's been coming out recently? And so that was really helpful. So that was it for the books. 4 books for the month. That's a good month for me for reading. So let's move on to some things that I learned this month. So between reading Writing in the Dark and discussing it with Lizelle and Kristen and Kevin, I feel like I have a much better understanding of horror, the genre, how it's kind of, how it works, how it has worked, elements that people are looking for. I've also really learned, I think some of the technical issues of horror. I've learned that there's a hesitancy to call things horror because sometimes people say, oh, I don't like horror, but horror is so vast in what kind of can be considered horror. And so I think sometimes people say they don't like horror, but they do. They just don't like certain kinds of horror. They don't like slashers, or they don't like gore, or like gross stuff, or like spooky stuff. But I feel like sometimes, I'm just trying to say, it's much more complicated, and I'm realizing the marketing side of that. So I learned that this month, that month. And also though, really thought, or I think that book really helped me learn what good comes out of horror, what it has to offer, and what can be done with horror other than just like, ugh, freaking out, you know? So I thought that was really good, and I really thought that that definitely added to my being ready to sort of enter that realm of, you know, publishing and writing, hopefully. And then the other thing kind of tangential to that is I did take R.L. Stine's Masterclass. This focused on writing horror and like more like spooky kind of creepy stuff. And it did have a little bit more of a focus on middle grade, though he does write and has written YA. I would say that his YA is more of a young YA. It definitely wouldn't fit in with what we would consider the typical YA, but I really liked it for the middle grade aspect. He really gave me a lot to think about in terms of how to open a book, what draws people in. He had some really great advice about coming up with concepts and titles, and I just really enjoyed it. I really liked him. He's like a cool guy. I think some of the again, when you're getting tips from the masters, I think some of the things that they can do, maybe we can't get away with, but I knew that going into it. So as long as you kind of know that listening, it's like, okay, that might have worked for you, RL, but I don't think that'll work for me. I did really like it, and it actually got me thinking a lot about writing like spooky middle grade. Like when I say spooky, kind of like how his Goosebumps book, I mean, I was obsessed with the Goosebumps book. So I was also obsessed with Fear Street, which he wrote when I was young. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I do feel like I learned a lot. I learned an appreciation for the writing and those kinds of books and what they do, because he was so passionate about how these books get kids to read, and he doesn't really focus so much on like teaching kids a lesson when it comes to middle grade, which again is something that I do think, I don't know, I think middle grade kind of has both, whereas like you definitely have like middle grade books with like a lesson, or like more so like, you know, YA definitely has like something that the character needs to learn, and he's writing middle grades where like the character doesn't need to learn anything. It's really just for pure entertainment, but his focus is like getting kids to read, getting them to not put down the book, and he doesn't really care about any of that other stuff. And while I don't know how popular that is in middle grade anymore, because I don't read that much middle grade, I really appreciated his passion for wanting to get kids to read. And it really made me think a lot about, if I do write a middle grade, I want to go into it with that thought process that like, I want to write this so that young kids can see how amazing and beautiful and exciting reading can be, and make sure that I'm writing in a way that a kid's not going to want to put the book down. Because a middle grade kid, they're right at that time where you got to try to get them, you know, when they're still excited about reading, and you don't want them to put that book down, because they may never pick it back up again, and it's going to set them on a trajectory for the rest of their life, you know? So it was a heavy masterclass, but in like a totally good way. Okay, so now for my writing for March. So I went back and watched my first episode to see like what I did in January and February, and what my plans were for March, so I could reflect on what actually happened in March. Because again, remember, we're trying to be ready to query by the end of the year. So like by December 31st, 2021, I would like to be ready to query my book. So in my last road to querying, I said that I wanted to use March to complete the 0 draft of the book, so that on day 1 of Camp Nano, I'd be ready to write the first full draft. Well, if you've been watching this channel at all, you know that did not happen. And I was like trying to think like, what happened in March that I didn't get all of that done? And honestly, girl, I cannot remember. So if you've been watching my vlogs, you probably know. And if not, maybe go check out my vlogs from last month. And they could help you out, because I do weekend vlogs every weekend. So I don't really know what I was doing in March, but I was only able to get the first act of my 0 drafted. And so I ended up doing 11,000 words by the end of March in my 0 draft. So, you know, whole book, just act 1. They're close, right? Maybe, yeah. So, yeah. 11,000 words is good, don't get me wrong. But 11,000 words in a month, I feel like something happened where I like went back to the beginning. I think that's what I did. Or did it? Yeah. I started it all over. No. So then why didn't I get past that? I don't know. I'm not as fast at this as I thought I would be. I can tell you that much. And I definitely need to be faster. So that is why at the end of March, I set my goal for Camp Nano to finish drafting the rest, Acts 2 and 3. And that was going to be a total of about 28 chapters, around a chapter a day. Now, we're in the middle of camp. You're gonna have to watch my vlogs to see how I'm doing on that progress. My next vlog will be up on Saturday, so if you're curious where I'm at with that, you'll have to see. And then of course, you'll have to make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already, to continue to see that journey, to see if I'm actually able to meet that goal by the end of this month. But I at least finished drafting Act 1. So, well, not drafting. 0 drafting. So for those of you who don't know what I mean by 0 draft, it is somewhere between an outline and a rough draft. It's literally like me telling the story in like a summary fashion. So I'm just like, Ivy walks into the school, and when she walks in the front door, she notices this, she goes to this place, she bumps into this person, they say this, she does that kind of thing, right? I'm not telling you the details, but they're in there, okay? So, that's basically what the zero draft is. So I'm thinking through every single aspect. I'm just not writing it in scene. That is what draft 1 is going to be. So that is what I will hopefully, future is still unknown, we'll be ready to write in May. So I don't know, we'll have to just wait and see. So I want to just be proud of myself that I got through Act 1 in March, and that I got 11,000 words, and then my hope is that I get more than 11,000 words in April. I'm learning that I'm still learning. That's what I'm learning. So I'm a forever student, but I do feel like I'm getting closer and closer to understanding what writing a book means and what it takes. And I'm feeling more confident. So I guess that's a win. Sure, we'll go with that. So that was my March wrap up for, you know, my road to querying. Am I any closer to being ready to query by the end of the year? I mean, I guess I'm 11,000 words closer, but it's making me very nervous. Very nervous. Because like I said before, I have to finish the zero draft. Then I have, gosh, for a second I thought I saw something red on my finger. It freaked me out. Okay, start over. Because first I have to finish the zero draft. Then I have to write draft 1. Then I have to read through draft 1. Then write draft 2. Then send draft 2 to people to read. Then do draft 3. Then read through draft 3. Make some revisions, so a possible draft 4. Maybe more people read it, depends on how much work is done and what kind of work. And then get ready for querying. So it's like 10 things, 9 or 10 things that need to happen in 9 months. When I say it like that, that means I would have to get one of those accomplished a month, and I just, oh, every time I do math, I get bad answers I don't want to hear or think about. You guys, I need to speed up this process. I need to get this going. Okay, we're not gonna spiral. We're not gonna spiral. This is a happy road to querying. This is what I accomplished. Here's to getting more accomplished in April. And if you wanna give me a confidence boost, please be sure to give this a thumbs up. It lets YouTube know that other people might enjoy this series on my channel as well. And if you're not already subscribed and you wanna see how this road is gonna go and where it's gonna take me by the end of the year, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and loving me and supporting me and saying all the kind and lovely, warm things that you do. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.